Oh, yay! All right. Woo!
Yeah.
Well, happy Friday. I'm sorry about that. I at the last minute I had a plan of what I was going to do, and at the last minute I tried to get fancy, and whenever I get fancy, I haven't done it fancy for a while. So first I want to check in with you. So Jasmine, are you in the swamp of South Carolina?
No, I'm in a cypress swamp in Georgia State Park.
You know, there's one just like that in South Carolina, and they have special, I forgot what the name of those trees are. Do you remember the name of those?
Cypress.
Oh, cypress, you just told me. And they've also got these things that look like stalactites or whatever.
That's part of it.
Yes, very cool. And Barb, where are you?
I'm still in Atlanta. I'm hitting the road tomorrow morning.
Nice.
Storm to pass. I don't like the idea of driving into bad weather.
Are you going to be gone for a long time?
Till December.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But I'm taking you with me. I have a question for you. When you taught the students, number one, did you wear the same shirts, and did you have the same personality, or did you go in with a straight poker face?
Well, in the beginning of the year, I would always be, I'm always professional, but I loosen up toward the end, and I'm a lot more fun. I think as I went through my career, I also loosened up quite a bit, because in the beginning, I kept my music life completely separate. In fact, I didn't know anything about it, and toward the middle part of my career, I was like, why is this, why do I need to keep this a secret, that I have this other whole life? And I started kind of lightening up a little bit, and actually even inviting students to recitals that my percussion students were doing, and then I even incorporated it so that the recitals were making money for projects that the medical students were involved with, and I had the medical students actually participating in the shows. They would always come in and
with a skeleton and beat on the ribs or something.
What's that?
I said you had skeletons and you beat on them.
Well, yeah, all kinds of stuff. And so I think as time went on, I realized I could fully integrate myself, and it wasn't something to not talk about, but I think 20, 30, 40 years ago, it just wouldn't be cool to be a drummer and, and to be a medical professional. And I think, the interesting thing is, since then, I've met tons of people in the medical profession that are also musicians, and very good musicians. And so it's kind of interesting how our brains work, the right side and the left side. But in the beginning, I was a lot more conservative in my dress and what I would say, and as time went on, I was like, hey, I don't really care, and I started wearing my Hawaiian shirts more, and for a long time I didn't do that either. I wouldn't be too crazy. In fact, today I have on my drum set shirt, which I haven't worn for a while, and I can't turn around because I'm afraid I'm going to trip over some wires, because what I decided to do today, I had mentioned to y'all last week that I was going to try to do tour of the drum set, and I actually didn't break the pearl down. I decided to keep it up, but I moved it, and so and I have it all set up so that I can do hopefully I can do a tour of the drum set of how it looks right now. And I did some recording last week. I can send you. I thought it would be fun to do a recording of the same song with the acoustic drum set and a recording of the electronic drum set, and I'll send it to you. And it's on, I'll put it on Facebook, but I'm going to put it as unlisted for right now. And it's not a perfect recording, but it was just to give you an idea of how the two different drum sets sound, maybe with the same song. And so I was just kind of playing around with that. So that's what I've been doing this week. And then also I discovered a really cool drum workout that I did yesterday with a drum guy who I just discovered his website, a drum educator, and it's fun to take ideas from other people. So I peruse around to other people's sites, and I get ideas. I'm like, oh, I do that, or I do it, but I do it like this. And see, it's always about growing and learning and expanding. But I found this workout. I just sight read it. It lasted 40 minutes, and there were a couple of them where I actually have to go back and look at them again because they were a little too fast for me. But a lot of them were like, oh, I do that exercise. And so it was fun to kind of play along. So I can actually send you that too if you want to just kind of look at it. So that was kind of cool. So what I'm going to attempt to do here, and I'm hoping my camera is going to talk, and if not, I'll break down and do it the old-fashioned way, but I just thought you could hear better if I have this mic on. And let me know if it's too loud, because I can turn it down. Is it okay? Not too loud? I can turn it up, too. I don't want to blast your ears out, but I think right now I'm going to go with this, and I'm going to attempt to get my, let's see, I think everybody's muted here. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and try to get my camera focused on the drum set, and we'll just talk through it and let me know if you have questions. And it might take me a minute to get it all working really well. I don't have the overhead camera, so I apologize about those lights that are probably blinding you right now. But I'll try to get it so that you don't have to look at that. So give me 1 second, and I will see you in a minute, hopefully behind the drum set, and then we'll just go from there and do a little tour of the current drum setup. Okay, I'll be We're just going to do the old-fashioned way, just with the computer. I unhooked it from everything, which is not how I wanted to do it, so maybe we can do it in another time. But so I'm back here sitting at the drum set, and I don't have my mic on, so you can't hear quite as well, but hopefully it's good enough. And so I just thought I would kind of like give you a little tour, and I tried to put my little backdrop over there because it's got a bunch of stands, and then I got a bunch of sticks, which are not fun to look at. So I was hoping to have a really nice background. I do have this background. It's sort of a cardboard piece, which looks kind of, whoa, there's my chimes back there. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of point this down, and we'll start with, and I know you're kind of looking at this is a snare drum here. Okay. And here's the floor tom over here. It's got my sticks on it. And if we go up a little bit higher and go over, you can see I've got a couple of tom-toms here, and I actually have mics on them, one here and one here. Okay, so these are kind of like the 4 drums. So if you were to go around the drums, you'd kind of go around like this to the right. Down here, of course, I've got my bass drum, so that's where my right leg is. And then over here, hopefully you can see, I've got my left foot on my hi-hat. And of course, I've got a mic here pointing down to the center of the snare. And then over here, I've got this stacker, which is really cool. It's 2 pieces of like a cymbal that's together. So a lot of times if you're playing on the hi-hat and the snare, you can come over here and play on the stacker too. And it just has a tight sound. Or if you were going to play double bass, which I don't have my double bass pedal set up right now, but if I wanted to play 2 feet on 2 pedals that are working the bass drum, I could have this hi-hat. I can have the closed hi-hat sound by playing on this. So it's kind of nice to have that option. Up above here, let me move this just a little bit. I've got this green cymbal. It's upside down China Boy. I think I've showed it to you before. And so it's looks kind of it's got a characteristic look to it, and I like it. I've had it since the 80s, and they were making some different cymbals at that time: red, blue, black, green. And of course, I had a green drum set, so I needed a green cymbal. So this is Paiste. Most of my cymbals are Zildjian, but I have a couple Sabian, and most of the others are Zildjian. And then this one happens to be my only Paiste because they made the color sound, which is kind of cool. Over here, I have what's called a Wuhan. It's it's a China. It's a small one. It's upside down. It has a characteristic gong sound. This is probably going to be really loud, but you get the idea of how that might sound. Hopefully it's, let me do this.
Karen, we're not hearing your drums.
How about that?
I like that.
Okay, so that's the China sound. Sounds like a gong. This one also sounds like a gong. Deeper. Okay, the back over here to the little stacker. Very metallic. Of course, my hi-hat. open and close, so you hit it, and then, with your foot, you can have the disco beat, Hopefully I'm not blasting your ears out there. So it's nice to have a hi-hat here. If I then kind of move this over and you start to see on this side of the drum set, well, maybe I'll just take this over and put it. I need to have another spot over here, but maybe I can just hold this for now. On the other side of my drum set, so starting with up here, I've got one of my favorites. This is my splash cymbal. This is a 10-inch Zildjian splash. And why is it called a splash? It just has a crash and it gets out of the way, and it's tiny and I love it a lot. This one here I've had since 1975. This is a Zildjian. I got it right around Easter time, and I was probably like in 7th grade, I think. So this was one of my very first cymbals, and I still love it. It's a crash, but it's a little bit longer. So you can hear the difference between a splash and a regular crash. It lingers for a long time.
How do they do that?
I'm sorry?
How do they do that?
It has to do with the size and the thickness, and that's the whole thing about different cymbals have a different. This one is very, very thin. This one's much more thick, and this one's quite small compared to this one. Now, this is a good size for a crash. They don't make really, really big crashes. You can see this cymbal here, how big it is compared to this one. This was not a crash. If I hit it like a crash, it is going to sound quite terrible. So I'll just give you an example. I would never want to use this as a crash cymbal. That just sounds awful. And so this is a ride cymbal. It's meant to be. So let's say you're playing jazz. Or rock. Or playing on the bell of the cymbal. This is meant to be when you're doing a beat. You play on this cymbal. You don't crash it. Same thing. If I try to play this crash up here, it wouldn't sound quite as bad as a ride. But if I used it like a ride, I mean, you could get away with it. But it is really meant to be crashed. So certain cymbals are crashes, certain cymbals are rides, certain cymbals are specialty cymbals like the Chinas. I would never use as a ride, or they are more for a crash. A gong sound. You wouldn't want to ride on them unless it was some kind of really like metal or punk or something where I wanted this grungy kind of terrible trash can sound. Then I might be playing on the crash like a ride. But most of the time, crashes are for crashing and rides are for riding. And when you're first starting out and you can't afford different crashes and rides because cymbals are extremely expensive, you would get something called a crash ride. So it's kind of in the middle. It's not too small, not too big. Could be crashed on, could be ridden, because maybe you only get one cymbal. And so in the beginning, people kind of go for crash rides, but ultimately you want a good ride cymbal, and one good ride cymbal and one good crash cymbal and a pair of hi-hats. And that's kind of like the standard beginner's drum set. You put your ride over here, you put your one crash over here, you got your hi-hats, and you're good. And then the next thing I encourage people to get is get a splash or get a China, one or the other. The Wuhans are pretty inexpensive. They're kind of nice to add if you don't have a lot of money and you want something different. The Wuhans kind of have a nice little sound.
So when you read the music, when you're reading the music, does it designate each one?
It does. And also, when it's a beat, you just automatically know that's a ride cymbal. And when it's, but they do have little markings. An X is a ride cymbal, and sometimes they'll denote, again, that little legend will tell you the crash looks like this. And you could just tell, after the fill, which is where you play on the drums, to go into the next section, there's usually a crash. And so you'll be able to see the difference between when I'm doing the beat, during the song, you're doing the beat, and then you do a fill, and then there's a crash, and you go back to the beat. So you can kind of tell by the music, which ones are the ride cymbals, which ones are the crash cymbals.
And then sometimes they'll be very specific and they'll write out every single little note. Other times they'll just say, like in jazz music, you just get what's called a chart. It's like an outline. And it'll have the kicks of the band, what they're doing, the trumpet section, ba 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 da bow, and you'll see that. So you kind of know I have to dat do got ka, that type of thing. They won't write out, the whole thing. They'll just say swing, 8 measures, and then they'll say fill, and then they'll have the kicks of the band. So sometimes it's sort of cryptic and they don't give you a lot, and sometimes it's extremely down to every single whatever. And when you're reading and learning, it's every single note. And then later on, they kind of leave it to you to, like, how to do a rock beat. Pick one that fits, or how to do a swing. Do a swing, do your swing. Just hit the band with these kicks, and this is the quiet part. This is where you shouldn't be playing. They'll give you guidance, but they leave it up to you. So sometimes it's very specific, and sometimes it's not. Here's one that's relatively new. Now this is cool. It's got holes in it. So not only looks like Swiss cheese, not only does it look cool, but this has got a very dry sound. In fact, it's called a dry trash crash. So it's a crash cymbal, but the word dry in music or in drumming is going to be kind of like a splash. It's going to get out of the way. Something that's a wet cymbal is something that's going to linger and last, just like you might imagine liquid. If you have something that's wet, you dump milk on the counter, it stays there. Whereas something that's dry, it's not there, and so that's an accurate name. So here's how it sounds. Whoa. First of all, I have to make sure I hit the cymbal. Gotta pay attention to what I'm doing here. Okay, so a lot like it's even drier than my splash. My splash lingers pretty long. This one's gone. So it's if you're playing a really big part of the song, you don't want to hit this because it's just going to be like kind of like somebody pulled the bottom out from under the big part of the song, like there's this big climactic thing and then like so you really want to hit the crash, this crash over here in the bigger part of the song. And then let's say you have these little baby places where you want just a little something, but you don't want it to last, and maybe it's a tiny little place where you want to have some kind of little there's not always just one big place in the song. There might be 2 or 3, so you might choose something like this. Over here, my chimes, my wind chimes, I love those for the quiet part of the song, or if there's just a part where there's no beat, where you just need some nebulous sound. Or you could do things on your cymbal like scrapes, or just, little tinkle sounds, or little rolls. I'm one-handed because I'm holding my computer, so I can't roll right now. But like with brushes, you could scrape or roll, or just do a lot of quiet little things that add a lot to the song. So I think that's kind of everything I have set up right now. I do have another cymbal over here in the corner that's not on the drum set, but let me put it here. So this is cool. I think I've showed you this one before. So let me get it to where you can see it a little better. I really wish my camera would have worked so I don't have to do this way, but I think it's working. So this one has a cymbal. Try to hold still on top of a cymbal. So I've got this cymbal down below here, and it's not a real fancy, expensive one. And on top, I have what's called a spiral stacker. So if I were to take this off, and I might do that, I'll take it off. It's like a cymbal that's been cut all the way around. So it's going to spiral down. And if you just hung it on a stand, it would just be like this spiral. And it really wouldn't sound all that good, but it looks really cool. But when you put it on top of another cymbal, I've kind of created sort of like my little stacker here. Let's see if I can get my stacker. My stacker has 2 pieces of metal, and I can actually adjust this and make them tighter or looser, so I can make this sound be really tight, or it can be more I can adjust it. Whereas this one up here, I can't really adjust it, but let me give you an idea of how it sounds. So again, it's kind of, it would be good for certain types of music where you just want that kind of characteristic grunge, kind of sound, like.
Can you get that one again? I didn't.
Sure. Oh, my thing keeps switching. My original sound is supposed to be on. I think my computer's trying to protect itself. Let me go further away so it won't turn itself off. The computer has this thing, this setting that all us drummers during COVID had learned about that we didn't realize is that, in Zoom, there's this thing called original sound on and original sound off. And the default is off. And so what happens is, somebody's playing along and you hear the first little bit and the computer's trying to protect its microphone. So it's like shuts off. So you have to do this little setting that says, stay on. I want to hear what's in the room, even though I know you don't like it. And so it did it on its own just now. So that's kind of interesting. It's like, that's loud. I don't want to hear that, so it's like it stops it. So if you're trying to play something, you hear the first few notes. And when we were all trying to learn how to teach lessons online, it used to drive us all crazy because we're like, you can't hear what somebody's doing the whole time. So anyway, okay, what questions do you have about this drum setup?
How do you know where to put your mics? Where do you mic things when
so
you're
there's
drumming?
a whole thing on miking. So let's talk about that. Good question. So let's see. I'm going to point down at the snare. So the snare, first of all, you can get by with a couple of mics. Right now, I didn't even show these up above here. You're going to see my ceiling. There's a mic up here, and there's a mic. Hopefully you can see there's a mic over there. I don't know where I'm pointing, but there's two. Those are overhead mics. And it just went off again. Original sound keeps doing that. Okay, so those are called overhead mics, and the idea behind the overheads, you kind of want them pointed. They have to kind of be pointed at the same spot, and they have to be the same distance. A lot of people actually will measure from their center of their snare to that overhead, and the center of the snare to that overhead, because when you're doing recording, you want them to actually be in sync with each other, and there's this thing where they can cancel each other out. So some people will actually point this one to the snare and that one to the floor, and the idea is you want to capture the overall sound, like a lot of the cymbals. Each cymbal doesn't have a mic most of the time. You've got the overheads, and one on the right and one on the left, and so that's really important to have. If you don't have a lot of money to buy a whole mic set, a lot of times people will get two overhead mics, a bass mic, and a snare mic, and you pretty much can capture a drum set sound, and then afterwards, after you've recorded, manipulate the sounds and make them sound better. So that's a really cool thing that, this bass drum, I can get it to sound way better than that after I've recorded something. So you can actually increase its reverb. You can do all these little tweaks, and there's a lot of tricks and tons of, people spend their lives trying to get the perfect snare sound. That's the nice thing about electronic drums that you'll appreciate when I send you those two videos to compare. It already has a preset beautiful bass drum sound, and I can hear it instead of having to mic it up. And so you could do a lot of tweaking. But so as far as your question of where to place the mics, it's very important to have a snare mic if you can afford it. So like a bass, a snare, and two overheads would be the minimum, I guess. So you've got it. Usually most people, this one's got a clip on it. Sometimes you can put it on a stand, but it gets really cumbersome when you have tons of stands everywhere, and they're hard to get in the right spot. So there's these little clips that clip on the rim, and then this microphone is actually pointing to the center of my snare. And you want it out of the way so you're not whacking it. So that's really the best place to put it. It also will capture some of the hi-hat sound. And so, and again, afterwards, when you're recording, you can make this, because this is a high pitch and the snare is a bit lower or middle, you can, let's say I hear way too much hi-hat in my snare. When you're recording, you have a different track for every, you can record all on one track, but the way I record, everything has its own track. So the bass drum has a track, and it's recording the bass mic. The snare drum has a track, and it's recording the snare only, or whatever else the snare mic is picking up. And each track So let's say my snare track, and you can actually listen to it by itself. So like once you've recorded all the tracks together, you can mute all of them and only listen to the snare and manipulate it. But let's say I hear a ton of hi-hat in the snare mix, and I don't want to hear hi-hat because I'm already hearing it from the overheads. I can actually cut down on the high sounds. There's a way, and maybe this would be a fun thing to do sometimes, share my screen and show you how I manipulate. I probably could do it now because, well, we don't have that much time, but I could pull up something that I recently recorded and show you how I manipulate it, because it's pretty interesting. It's pretty involved. The recording part's easy. It's the afterwards that takes forever to get it all tweaked up. But I could take that hi-hat sound out of my snare, or at least lessen it, so that I hear pure snare. So the mic here is capturing snare. If I look at my toms up here, I actually have tom mics, which is nice to have separate mics on your toms. I've got a clip here, and it's pointing to the center of the drum. It's not touching anything. It's pointing right here, but it's in a place where I'm not going to whack it, because you don't want to hit your mics because they're expensive. Then if I look over here, I've got a clip, and here's my mic pointing to the center. And then if you were to look down here, not sure how well you can see, I've got a floor tom mic pointing here. And then my bass drum mic, you can bass, some people, if you have lots of mics, sometimes too many mics is too much. You could put a mic on the head where the beater is, and you could put a mic where mine is. On the front of the bass drum is a hole, the one where Beamer came out of. That's the mic hole. So I have a mic going in that hole. So, and you can put it way in the bass drum, or you can put it just right at the hole, or you can put it right at the front head. So it depends what you want. I try to put it just inside, not way inside. And so I've got a snare mic, 3 tom-tom mics, a bass mic, and 2 overheads. And that's kind of my setup. And all those go into this fancy box, which my computer is sitting on right now, where I can increase or decrease levels. And then once you've done your recording, you open up your what's called a digital audio workstation, and you go in and you can listen to each one. You can listen to them all together. And usually I have a track with the song. So I have the song. So in the early days when I didn't know what I was doing, I would record the song. And sometimes I do this on my electronic drum set on purpose, because it's just a lot of work to do all this and takes so much time. Sometimes I will have my electronic drum set. I'll take my phone with the song, put it into my electronic drum set, take my electronic drum set out to my ears and to my recording device, and I've already pre-decided how loud I want the song and me. So if I want me to be kind of louder than the song, or the song to be louder than me, or if I want it balanced, I do that before I record, and then when I record, I have me and the song together. The problem with that is if you discover later the song's too loud, I can't hear me, or I'm too loud, I can't hear the people singing, or whatever it is, I can't do anything about it because it's all on one track. And whereas this way, I have my audio of whatever it is, and then all these other things, I can make my bass louder, my snare quieter, I can make the song louder, I can make all of me louder or softer, I can manipulate. And so that's what I do now. It's a little bit more work, but on the acoustic drums, I do it that way. On my electronic drums, I don't always. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And on the electronic drums, pretty much I only have 2 tracks, the audio and me with everything. I don't have the bass and the snare, and I do that up front, like I have it all the way I like it, so that it's coming in the way I want rather than all these different things. But on an acoustic set, you kind of have to do it that way, because some of these instruments just don't project as well as others. And sometimes what you hear in your ears, you think it's one way, and then you listen to it later and you're like, oh my gosh, that is not what I thought. So questions about that?
So is that just for you and your own feedback, or is that for recording, or
Both.
is that the guy in the booth with the big boards that has all the levers and stuff?
Yeah, so that guy is doing that for the whole band, and so like at a live performance, you want maybe the guitar's too loud or the bass is too loud, or I want the drums to be a little louder or softer. So that's what that big board is doing. And so, like for instance, yesterday I made a recording for a colleague of mine in the Troopers who, isn't the greatest sight reader. And so he learns best by watching and listening. So he said, "Hey, will you, this music that we're playing this summer, will you make a recording of the tune with a metronome with you on a pad so that I can like watch you and then I'll memorize the song that way because I don't like to read it." Like we said before, some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people like to watch, whatever. I'm visual. I can read anything. Sometimes it takes me a minute, but I'm a really good sight reader. So I like to look at stuff. And so for me, that's just the opposite. So I would hate it if somebody made me a video and said, play what I'm playing. I'd be like, can you send me the music? Like this is just going to take way too long. If you just send me the music, I will play it, but I got to sit there and look, what are you doing? And then I write it out anyway. So I did that yesterday, and I can send you that recording as long as you don't share it anywhere because it's top secret. But basically, just to get the idea of how you might do that, and then I can send you the one that's like I mentioned before, a recording on an acoustic drum set with a particular song that I recently discovered, which I love, and then it's my warm-up song, and then another one over on the electronic drums just to hear wow the differences or whatever. And then maybe next week I can set up and share my screen. I mean, I could probably pull it up now really quick, but I'd rather do a whole thing maybe on it and pull it up and just show you, okay, here's something I've recorded. Now let's manipulate it together. What do you think about this sound? Do you like that sound? Let's change this. What does it do to it? And then kind of make a little make a product. And then what I do is I also have to sync up my video. So here's the other component of all that is let's say I've got a video of me playing the acoustic drums. I record the sound on the video so the video can hear me and see me. But the sound on that little recorder, that little video camera or a phone or whatever, is usually not very good. The sound that you're going, and you can't really necessarily manipulate it because it's on the video. And if you're going to show the video, you don't want that sound. You want the good sound that's over here that I can manipulate. So what I do is I go into a program where I can put the video with the audio captured from my camera, the terrible audio. Then I have already pre-did the other audio and I like it. I'm going to bring it in. And so now I've got two tracks. This one's got video and terrible audio, and this one's got good audio. I can just take that video with audio and get rid of the audio. I take it away, but I have to sync things up. So before I take it away, I have to look at the wavelengths and find where did I hit a crash and look at it and hear it and make sure my good audio sound, because there's nothing worse than, you all know when you watch a movie and somebody's mouth is not going along, it's just a tiny bit off and it just drives you absolutely nuts. And as a drummer, oh my gosh, that really drives you nuts. And there's people who are terrible editors that they need to learn how to edit better. So you need to kind of like make things really I expand it out because sometimes when you put it in there, your whole song is like that long. I bring it out so that I can see the individual wavelengths and I actually match them up. I mean, absolutely perfectly because it will drive me nuts. And sometimes I have tweaks and there's problems. So if you see one that I've done everything already and I just can't get it better. But most of the time I won't post those. But so, and I do a lot of this recording just for myself, just for practice to see how do I sound? How does this look? You learn that way. So you think it sounds great, then you listen to it and you're like, that's terrible, So, but anyway, you want to line these things up and then I get rid of that terrible audio. I just make it go away. Just bloop, it's gone. And now the good audio is lined up with the video. And then you can finally, put in your title and put in your little, if you want to put little pictures, or you can put things above, or you can split your screen and show. Maybe you have a camera up above and one from the side. Again, I've got to sync those up. And so let's have a GoPro from up above. And it's got, again, same problem. It's recording the audio too, but not good audio. Especially if you're on an electronic drum set. It's recording that pad sound. It's not recording that good sound that's going through the drum module. So now you can actually have a split screen, or you can actually cut to the up above and then go back to the front view or the side view. Sometimes I have 3 cameras going. So you can see how this gets like crazy, and I'm getting better. I mean, I have made so many mistakes, and that's the way you learn, of just, the only way you get better is like constantly. And that's why I record myself all the time, so I can get better at editing. I can get better at the process. And it's fun, and it comes in handy if you're doing a project like I said, or for students. Let's say a student is working on a particular song and they're like, well, how does this go? I'll make them a little video, and then I put it on YouTube, but it's unlisted, so nobody can get to it except for that student, and then I can make it go away or whatever. But that way they can go easily, look at it, watch it, play it. Then when they have their lesson, it helps to know, what we were talking about and how things go and all of that. So
many things.
Yeah, it's a lot more involved. And I've had to learn along the way, and technology has changed. So in the early days when I was learning how to do all this, it was even more complicated because, now we just imagine, like we went from the rotary phone to the cell phone to what our phones do now. So it was very cumbersome back then. Things have gotten a lot easier, but with that, we've had more choices, which makes it more complicated, just like your phone. It can do so many things, but that's kind of a problem because you get hung up on what it can do. Sometimes I try to stick with programs that are pretty easy because I don't need the fanciest thing. Same thing with technology has gotten to a point where, in my opinion, this TV versus that TV, this one's $3,000 and this one's $300, but it can do this, but it can do that, but it can do that. Well, I don't need that. I can't even tell the difference. If I listen to that and that, honestly, I can't see it. I can't hear it. And I think that our technology has gotten so good that even the iPhone is a pretty good recording device. And a lot of people who do drum covers don't mess with all this stuff like I'm talking about. They just put their iPhone up on a stand, and there's a program where you can put your music in, slow it down, speed it up, play along with it, post it, and it looks pretty doggone good. But I like to go a little bit more than that. I don't need to be a recording engineer, but I think I could do a little better than just, slapping an iPhone on a stand. I mean, for people who are starting out, that is great, but I just want to learn more all the time about the process. And so I use easy programs like GarageBand and iMovie. And there's other programs that cost a lot more money, and they give you a lot more. The things that I like about the more expensive programs is when you're editing, let's say in iMovie, I pretty much get a couple of tracks, and I've had to do some workarounds to kind of get my extra cameras involved. Whereas more fancy programs like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere Plus, or there's a whole bunch of them, they cost money. First of all, a couple $100 or $30 a month or whatever. It gets expensive if you're not doing it all the time. Plus they keep upgrading. I just pulled out one program I had from not that long ago, and it's totally doesn't work on any of my computers anymore. So I just stick with the easy stuff that's pretty much coming along with my Mac, and it works pretty well for me. But I'm at the point where I might upgrade, but only if I'm really going to be doing it a lot to justify a whole new learning everything and more choices. But the thing I like about these programs is you can have tons of video and tons of audio. It makes it more complex now because you have all these choices. Right now, I have to make really important choices because I pretty much get two. And in GarageBand, I can do a bunch of different tracks, but you can't manipulate them as much as you could on these other programs. So it's kind of like, do I really need to, like, for my purposes with students, it doesn't have to be, you know, quite like that. But things that I do professionally, I like them to look nice. So I'm kind of at the cusp where I could bump up, but then it's going to take me a while to learn it all. And during that time, it's not going to be great. So I'd rather stick with the easy stuff that I could do really well and max out on it. And I'm almost maxed out. I'm still learning stuff though. And once I can get to a point where like I'm getting bored with it and it's just I'm ready, then I'll jump to the next stuff. But yeah, it can get really complex really quickly and lots of choices and sometimes more choices than good because you head down you could spend 6 hours trying to do this one thing that nobody else is going to even notice anything about it, you know. So
Yeah, but if you're playing with a recorded song, somebody else's song, how do you edit out the percussion?
Good question. There are programs that do that. That you can, and they're some of them are free, and you can actually take the drums out. You can take the voice out. Now, a lot of people do that. I actually like the drummer in there, but I don't always play what they're playing. And I know for other people that that's distracting. But for me, I don't mind the drummer in there. It's like we're having two drummers. It's cool. Or sometimes I'll only play percussion to that particular track. But there are programs that will take your other drummer out, and you can also go to places and get the music. Sometimes you have to pay a little bit. You can get the music without the drummer in it, or without the voice in it, or without the guitar in it. And then you can, yeah. So there's a whole market for this kind of thing. And then there's also, um, let's see. Oh, sorry. All of a sudden it's wanting me to do different things. Okay, like go away. I don't want to install that right now. There are, I forgot my train of thought now. Programs that take stuff out. Oh, transcripts. So let's say you want to see, you know, this particular fill that the drummer's doing, and you want to play it exactly like they're playing it. You could actually look that up. Sometimes it costs a little bit, not very much, a couple bucks, and you can get the written, or you can go on YouTube a lot of times, and there's usually somebody who are like, if it's a really popular fill, there's somebody who's explaining it. This is how it goes. This is how it looks. And doing a little tutorial on that one person's one part in one song. So that's really cool. There's a lot of free educational stuff available, and I look at that stuff, you know, if there's something that I mean, I get ideas. So it's always good to keep your eyes and ears open and learn from everybody. And it doesn't always have to be really great people. Just regular people have great ideas. I've learned a lot from my own students, and some of like y'all, even your questions are great, you know, and it's like, why do we do that? You're right. So it's always good to keep growing and learning, and it keeps your mind active. And you know, I heard something recently that drummers live longer than other people, and I think it has to do with your brain. You know, like when you're, or musicians in general, not just drummers, I guess. And there's these people that have brain issues that, you know, don't remember their own name or where their room is, but they can sit down and play, you know, amazing stuff. And so I can't help but think that it's good for your brain. So the more that you can listen to music, stay active, use your brain, it's only good, you know, and it's fun, and it, you know, makes people happy. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Also, the iPhone store gives free classes on GarageBand, but I didn't know what it was at the time.
Which does? Who does it?
If you go to an iPhone store, you know, they have free classes all the time.
Yeah. GarageBand is not, it's pretty easy, but there are some weird things to it. And there have been times where, like, I'll watch a YouTube video and I'm like, oh man, I've been doing like 20 steps to get, like, I just had to do that one thing. You know, like sometimes I struggle, you know, I like to struggle. Because I will remember and I learn. But then somebody shows you and you're just like, oh my gosh, you know, like, oh, I didn't
You know, like I've been taking pictures by hitting the wrong button. They said that's because the way you're holding the phone, you're hitting the right button sometimes, and sometimes you aren't. And I've been doing that way for years. And now I'm finding out that I'm not hitting the button.
Yeah. And there's a
So
ton.
weird.
Yeah. And
Oh, I got one for you. If you
Okay.
go into handicap or accessibility on your phone and you turn on magnifier, then when you go to your home button and click it rapidly 3 times, you have a big magnifier. It magnifies anything you scan.
Nice.
So if you have a little tiny stuff on your sheet music you can't read.
Exactly. You know what I do sometimes? I'll take a picture of whatever it is, and then I just blow it up.
This is fast though. 3 rapid clicks and you got the whole screen as a magnifier.
Nice.
I was having dinner with someone who was legally blind and I couldn't read it and he's over there and I'm looking at his phone and it's huge. And he said it to me.
You need to do iPhone classes, Barb.
No, I used to know everything until the virus. I went in there the minute I got in town, I'd take all their classes, but now I only have a 5 SE. That's all I have.
I think this has given me ideas for next week. Maybe we will do my version, the very watered down, easy GarageBand, how I use it. Yeah, and I'll share my screen, and I'll have something on there, and we'll edit it together. I think
I'll have to do it while I'm having my yard sale. I think it's going to rain. But I'll have you on.
Well, I'll record it, and then we can always watch it later too.
Okay. The other thing is my friend was doing a performance and she has a drumming group here in Atlanta. And I saw a video. She sent me a video of it. They've got these big, huge floor, I guess, what are they? Bongos? Like one drum.
Oh yeah, it's
like this.
Danoons, the ones that I used to bring.
Yeah.
To,
and they're all off a little from each other when they're banging on these drums. And then they've got this tall singer who's got to be at least 75, who's just out there like this, and it's mostly talking and Janis Joplin kind of more talking. It was hysterically funny, but they're at it. And they're all over, like, I'd say at least 65, 75. They're all in there. It's a women's group.
What are they called? Because
I don't know. I'll find out. And I don't know. It was some funny name.
I have some friends, conundrums, because I have some friends who play and do that sort of thing.
What's the name of their group?
Conundrums.
Could be. It could be that one. They have a singer with a deep voice.
Maybe. Yeah. They do a lot of dancing. They've got the didgeridoo, or I can't pronounce that word. The Australian thing that.
Yeah.
Crazy
sound. Remember something.
Yeah, didgeridoo or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we have to end, but have a great weekend. Sorry my technical difficulties, but hopefully we salvaged it enough. And next week, GarageBand 101.
Cool, a garage sale.
Okay, have a good one. Bye.
Bye, thank you. What I don't get is how my nephew, who has no musical background whatsoever, is a drummer in some local band in Athens. I don't get it. How is that possible?
It's possible. Anybody can play music, just different ways. We're all doing the same kinds of things. Okay, I gotta let you go because I know Valerie will get mad at me. All right.